All right. So today we have Jen Young with Tennessee Title who has graced us with her presence, and she's honestly one of the people in the whole world. So thank you for joining me and Craig today.
Well, thanks for having me, fellas.
Of course, of
Of
course.
course.
So tell us a little bit about you. Like, why do you do what you do, and what is it that you do?
Well, I am a manager at Tennessee Title Services. And ever since I was a little girl, I always dreamed of growing up and becoming a title agent, which is not true. But now that I've found myself in this position, I absolutely love my job. I have a really great job. I get to see people buying homes. I get to see sellers selling their homes and moving on to the next part of their life. I get to work with some really great agents who are helping people make their dreams come true. Lenders who just really want to help people finance their homes and do it the right way. I just feel really fortunate. I have an amazing team behind me that just basically makes me look like a rock star. I'm just really fortunate, really feel blessed.
Love it, love it. Cool. How long have you been in the business? What got you to where you are?
Well, I started off working at Gettysville as a member relations director there, and an owner of a title company approached me and said, "Hey, you would be really good at marketing. Do you want to get into marketing?" So I started marketing for a title company and started learning the position slowly, and just kind of realized I loved it. Everything about it, just kind of how all the pieces fit together to make the home ownership dream come true. And then I have the owners of my current company approached me and said, "We want to open up a Knoxville branch. Would you be interested in heading that up?" And absolutely, I said, if I can do things my way, I will. And it has been so fun the last 3 years working for Tennessee Title Services and just kind of doing our own thing.
Love it. Okay. So title companies. I work in the industry, so obviously I know a little bit about them. But what exactly is a title company, and what role do you all play when it comes to transactions for a consumer?
A title company, what we do is we just make sure that a property can legally be transferred from one party to another. So we are a third neutral party that handles the closing. Easy peasy, right?
You're like the grease. You're like the grease on the track before
We're just making sure, yep, everybody just shakes hands.
Yeah, I got you. Cool.
Love it. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm
So
gonna
it
ask.
kind of to get deeper into that, what we do, we provide title insurance that protects buyers and lenders should any issues arise later on after closing. We disperse closing funds and we remedy any title issues that we find.
Okay.
It's almost like you're like, so for my sports fans, we got a little bit of a sports analogy here. You're kind of like the quarterback of a real estate transaction. You kind of make sure everything happens the way it's supposed to, and you make sure that the funds go where they need to go, and that everyone's protected properly. Is that kind of a
No,
good?
I'm going to one up you and I'm going to say
Okay.
Adrian is definitely driving the train. He gets to be quarterback. I'm more like the referee. I'm
Okay.
just making sure that everybody plays nice and follows the rules.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. That makes sense.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna ask what I feel is a burning question whenever somebody is buying or selling a house, and that's closing costs and fees. What are they, and how can somebody to word it the nice way in my mind, everybody wants to save as much money as possible, but if
Mhm.
you're the cheapest person, you're probably not getting the best service either. So how can you stay on the up and up? What are some of the costs that come into it? What are non-negotiables? And how can somebody that is considering different title companies determine what's a good fit?
Great question. So buyers and sellers have different closing costs. Sellers are responsible in Knoxville. So it's different in like our company is based out of Brentwood and it's different over there, title costs and closing costs. But in Knoxville, traditionally, the seller is responsible for their title charges. They're responsible for any HOA fees that are going to be prorated, taxes that are going to be prorated. If anything needs to be cleared up on the title, that's most likely in most scenarios a seller's responsibility. Um, Buyers, on the other hand, are paying for if there is a loan, lender's title insurance, homeowner's title insurance, And those are rates calculated by our underwriter. They're paying for government recordings and fees, and those are mandated by the state of Tennessee. So any title company you go to, those will be universal across the board. So you can try to shop around for those, but guess what? The government is what it is, and they're not going to change. Same with the underwriting fees. We use, I think, 6 different underwriters. And so we try to shop for that fee, just making sure that that we can pass along those savings, and make sure that the person has the right coverage. And then we have our closing fee, which is a flat fee at Tennessee Title Services. I see other companies charging for wires, couriers, notary fees, mobile fees. We don't do any of that. Ours is just a flat fee. And then if you're outside of Knox County, you're going to have a search fee, just because Knox County, all the records here are digitalized. Wait, can we pause and pretend that I can say digitalized?
Yes, go ahead and just repeat the sentence.
Okay. How did I start it? All outside counties of, hang on. Outside Knox County, what should I say?
I think that's how you phrase it. You're talking about search fees in other counties.
Okay,
that was.
So in Knox County, all the records are digitalized, and so if we are doing a search that's outside of Knox County, we charge a search fee, because we're paying abstractors to go out to these rural communities, and they're actually going to courthouses and looking through, sometimes still binders, looking at deeds and Rolodexes. So that can get a little bit more pricey.
Okay. That's something that I have never, ever thought about, because, growing up in Knoxville, you're in a larger city that's been, a little bit ahead of the curve on, digitizing some file systems and things like that. I've never thought about the fact that you'll have rural areas that don't have that type of infrastructure. And you really do just have to pay somebody to go look into that and look through the files. I had never even considered that. That's really
well,
interesting.
another thing that we're really running into lately is, everybody wants to buy up land right now. And you have these huge, big properties that have been passed down from family to family to family and haven't had surveys since the beginning of time. So I have a lot of people complaining right now, just saying, why does this need a survey? The legal description is there. And I'm looking at these legal descriptions, and they're from a million years ago that say, to the left of the largest oak tree, 5 feet from the creek where it ends, instead of having, latitude, longitudes, and calls and start stops. And people want insurance still. They want to be able to say, this is where my property ends, this is where it starts, but they want to go off property descriptions from, when the Civil War was. And then you guys, Adrian, I'm sure you're familiar, there's not a lot of surveyors working right now, and the surveyors who are so backed up. So that is something that is taking a long time. So I always caution my buyers, if you are buying property, just in the back of your mind, if it's outside in one of these rural areas, it might delay closing. It might take a little bit longer.
So let's unpack that a little bit. Actually, I have a couple questions there. On the surveyor costs, first of all, I know there's been a little bit of a phenomenon recently, especially this year, where this is, I know, different, but on the house buying side of things, appraisers and what do you call them?
Surveyors,
yeah, I suppose, are really backed up and are charging a premium to come out and just look at the house or whatever, give it this clean bill of health. Is that how it is with the surveyors for land as well? What's the cost
absolutely.
associated with that? Is that going to be really a lot more expensive this year than it may have been in years past, or how does that work?
Absolutely. And these surveyors, I guess to become a surveyor, and I don't know the exact process, but it's pretty tedious. You have to kind of mentor underneath somebody who's been doing it a long time before they turn you loose on your own. So there's not a lot of people who are qualified to be able to do it. So the surveyors who are working in the field are incredibly backed up, and they can charge what they want to. And so when buyers call me and they say, do you know a surveyor? And I say, yeah, here's a list of people that I know of. You just have to call around, and they'll say, well, how much does it cost? Well, that's between the surveyor. And I'm not seeing like a straight calculation that they're using. It's more of, when can I get you in? How big is the property? How much work am I going to do? And then they can give you a quote from there.
Right. And it's like, what's the rush on this? If it's a rushed case, it might cost more. But if
Exactly. And if you're doing, 2 acres versus people who are buying 50 acres, that's going to be, I've seen surveys be $10,000.
Wow. So in the case that there's going to be, maybe a rural property that someone's purchasing, as the title agent or the manager of the title company, do you guys kind of advise on when the closing date should be scheduled so that you give yourself enough time to make sure all these things are taken care of? Or is that someone else that schedules the closing date?
Well, so when the realtors are writing the contracts, they usually put in there when they want the closing date. Now, how can we stick to that closing date? That's a whole nother story, because there are so many players on the field, right? We've got the lender, and Adrian can tell you, I mean, sometimes collecting documents is easy. You'll ask for something and they'll get it to you in 2 days. It's just like that in title. We're asking for, do you have a operating agreement for your LLC? It could take somebody a day. It could take them a week. And then the people who take a week to get their documents back don't realize that is pushing back their closing date. So I tell folks on the front end, listen, if you want to meet this deadline, you've got to play your part too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you say the surveying costs go to the seller or to the buyer?
Well, and that's negotiable, like
Okay.
at that point. And it's been very interesting as our market has been shifting. It's very much so a seller's market. And so before, buyers would come and they would say, listen, I want you to pay for the home warranty. I want you to pay, we're going to split the commission of the agents. We're going to da, 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 da. But now sellers are like, in fact, if you want to bring the best deal to the table, you will be able to pay for all of these things. So it's interesting how the market is shifting, because sellers are calling the shots right now.
Right.
There are just not enough houses. There's not enough inventory for buyers to be able to not be competitive with their offers.
So
Right.
I've got a question. I'm going to start with a story because I like to talk, and then I'll get to the question.
I
So-
love your stories.
We've been talking about surveying land and about, rural houses and how it's never been transferred. Nobody knows where the heck anything actually is. The first house I ever bought was in a subdivision. And so it was subdivided land. Everything was platted out. We knew the boundaries, legally speaking, because the house was built in the 80s. But there was still this ongoing battle with me and one of my neighbors as far as like where you would mow. I would mow further towards their yard, and then they'd come through a couple days later and mow forward into my yard. And so it's one of those realities of like, we don't really know where the line is. He thinks it's over here. I think it's over there. And here we are in this like silent suburban war, because that's all you do. But
This very passive aggressive fight.
right. But we talked owner's title insurance really briefly, and I feel like this is kind of opening that door. So if you are buying a house and you first you get owner's title insurance, we can talk about what that is. What does it protect, and why is it or is it not crucial?
Well, I always tell folks, this is the largest investment that you will ever make when you buy a home, right? An owner's policy is a one-time fee. It is not like car insurance. It is not like health insurance where it is going to come out monthly or annually. It is at the time of closing. We live in a world of insurance, right? We've got health insurance, homeowners insurance, car insurance, pet insurance, life insurance, da 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 da. Why wouldn't you insure the largest investment you will ever make? To me, it's not just another extra that you should just, because it is optional, that you should just write off. So the key thing with title insurance that I tell folks, it protects you from unknown defects. The key word here is unknown, right? There's no telling what could come up later in life. Who comes forward? If somebody comes knocking on your door and says, listen, I've got a will here that this property was heired to me. This is legally mine. And they are going to fight you and take you to court. Guess what? Even if they don't have claim to the property, they can still try to take you to court. We know that, right? But the whole purpose of title insurance is just like a car insurance. You call your title agent and you say, listen, some crazy lady showed up at my door and is saying that she really owns my house. I need to make a claim. And of course, my first reaction is, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Let's write this all down. I'm going to call our underwriter and we've got you. So any legal fees that you would incur going forward to fight this battle, that is all covered by title insurance.
Okay. Are there any like real case examples you've had where like it's easy to think of, oh, something tragic's happened, I have to make a claim. But what about like the passive aggressive lawn mowing suggestions? What about things where like maybe the answer is not so clear cut? What's some examples you went into?
I mean, I guess if you wanted to pull up your legal description, and that is on your warranty deed, which has already been recorded. Adrian, you live in Knox County. So we could go to the county and we could pull it up. We could print a copy and we could nail it to their front door. We could highlight, we could tie strings exactly where your property stopped and started. We could, or you could just go over and shake their hand and say, dude, I'll pay you an extra $20 a month and you can just mow the whole thing.
Nice.
But some things that people don't even think about, and I have this list in my mind of different ways that not only that you could lose your property if somebody came forward, but it could make it very difficult to go and sell your property if there are these disputes. So the most common thing out there that our underwriters are saying is they are seeing forged deeds and mortgages, satisfactions, just forgery in general. I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm a notary, which, you know, with great power comes great responsibility, but not really. My job as a notary isn't to verify the legal documents to see if, you know, somebody filled out the paperwork right. A notary's job is to verify who is signing. So I look at a license, I look at your signature, and I make sure you are you, and then I let you sign. I'm not the one who's preparing these things. So if you think about it, I mean, I could draw up a warranty deed. I could go to my neighbor who's my friend and my notary, and I could say, yeah, I'd like to quit claim this property, sign it, and then I can go record it. Does that mean it's fair and accurate? No, but these things happen, right?
That's a risk there. That's a huge risk right there. I hadn't thought about that either.
So here's a horror story. Another office had a husband and wife come in to do a refinance, and he wanted to quit claim his wife off the property while he was refinancing, and he was going to do a cash out, and he was getting like $78,000. So him and his wife sit down to sign their paperwork, right? They're just moving right along. Come to find out, it's not his wife, it's his mistress. It's his mistress. And they're going to go ahead and take that money and do who knows what. And the only reason the office caught it was because they called the home while the couple was in there, and the wife picked up and they said, oh, I'm sorry, who is this? I mean, they had gone to the lengths of creating an ID. And I mean, thank goodness they had called, but who would have thought that somebody would come in and try to sneak that money, right?
That's identity theft.
It is.
Oh my gosh.
Other things that can happen are just incompetent people. We're seeing a lot of these realtors knock on doors, or investors knock on doors to elderly folks and say, listen, I'll pay off your house and I'll give you an extra $10,000. And sure, that sounds nice, when in reality, their home is valued at 4 times the amount of what these investor shark people are offering. So they get somebody to sign a quit claim deed, they sign their rights over, and all of a sudden, you know, the son over in Illinois is saying, Mom, why'd you sell your house? And she's like, oh, I got a great deal. Well, he gets involved saying, no, that's a lawsuit. I'm going to sue this person because my mom was incompetent. She was under duress. and she shouldn't have signed away the rights of her home. Well, now, this poor buyer, unsuspecting buyer who just bought a house, has no idea of the backstory, but now they're being sued. I mean, this stuff happens.
Yeah,
Wow.
I've seen that happen before actually. And to kind of put a little reality to it, in your situation where, mom sells the house to an investor buys the house, renovates the house, put the house up for sale. The buyer comes along, says, "Ooh, home sweet home. I'm going to raise my family here." And they buy it. That's the person who's going to get all the subpoenas. That's the person who's going to get the door knocks because they're the legal
Right.
house.
Right. And then the other thing that a lot of people don't think about is all of these liens, judgments, anything, all of those things stick with the property. So just because somebody didn't pay their taxes, it doesn't follow Joe Blow around the rest of his life. It attaches to the property. So if you buy a house and it turns out that they haven't paid taxes since 1978, you are now stuck with that if your title company doesn't catch it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know that a lot of sellers probably aren't proactive, especially in a seller's market, as we are in right now. But for the responsible seller out there that wants to make sure that they are selling a house in good order and not going to cause any issues for their buyer down the line, what's something that you can do if you're wondering about the title or any liens against your property, anything like that? If you're just curious, maybe even if you're not selling, if you own a home, is there a way to do like a title search on your own, or do you have to go to a person like you, Jen? Or what's the best way to do some research that way?
You can absolutely try and do it on your own. Have you ever tried Googling yourself?
Right.
You can start there. You can call the county, the tax assessor. You can start there if you have any questions, but you can always call a title company and just say, I'm thinking about selling, but not just yet. How much is it for just a title search? And they'll quote you on a fee there. And, like my company would do it for $330, and you could have all of that. And it would pull up exactly what that history looks like.
Cool. Okay. So that's a common thing then. So you do title searches just for someone that's just curious, and you said around $350.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise it though, because if
Yeah,
at the time when you do sell it, that's what happens anyways. So the
sure.
title company will do their due diligence. And honestly, with sellers, one of the big things I'm seeing is these huge HOA fees. And in Tennessee, which I think is so weird because I'm not from the state of Tennessee, and in Knoxville, HOA fees, a lot of them are not mandatory. So it's voluntary HOA fees. And sometimes I think people get mixed up when they get bills and they're like, should I pay it? Should I not? Some do, some don't. But now we have all these HOA companies out of Florida that are managing these neighborhoods that are so far away, and they are charging an arm and a leg to people to release this information. And so a lot of times, even though you think that your fees are voluntary, at the end when you go to sell your house, the management company is going to take a big $300 fee just to release, saying you don't owe any dues.
Oh, geez.
Something that I run into is it works because of my position, but there's another Adrian Hall that exists, and Adrian Hall owes some different banks and credit unions money. So whenever
he is living his best life, right?
right. Whenever I buy or refinance a house, every time since like the second time I ever did, it comes up and they're like, is this you? And I have to say, no, I work for that company, or I work in this industry. I cannot have charge-offs with them and have a job. That's not how this works. It's somebody different. Do you have any idea why things like that come up, or even how do they? Because I feel like I see that every so often of, similar names, or maybe it was that person in the past and they have to deal with this obligation they had before they can buy this new house. What's the background there financially?
Well, and you just have to think, our job is to make sure that this property, the new owner gets it free and clear. So we just have to double check all the Adrian Halls out there. If one does pull up and he is living his best life, we just need to make sure that that is not used, so that the new buyer isn't responsible for any of those credit cards or any of those liens or judgments. And so what usually happens is we pull up and we see the last four digits of, this evil Adrian Hall that's out there. And then we look at, responsible, good making citizen choices, Adrian Hall, and we just verify, oh, these last four of this social security numbers don't match up with him. And that's how we remedy that. And sometimes, Adrian, I think our last closing, you did a not one in the same as, right? Like this Adrian Hall who lives on this property with this social security number is not me. And you just sign something and then you're good to go.
Okay. That makes sense. I never thought about it that way. Another question I have, which is probably a scary one for some. I'm numb to it due to our industry, but wire fraud.
Oh.
Background on wire fraud for those who don't really know, just a quick PSA. Wire fraud is bad.
Thanks for that too.
When you're buying or selling a house, or even just doing simple like financial transactions, it doesn't even have to be real estate related. A lot of times there's different hands in the pot. You have different companies, different third parties, a little casual sending your information around. And I think that is fair and unfair at the same time. But in the world we live in, where there's so much technology at your fingertips, you mentioned Googling yourself. If you Google anybody that owns property, you can find out their address. If you work hard,
for sure.
Number, you can find out their email address, social media accounts, all of that. It's all on the internet. So often what will happen is somebody will intercept an email somewhere along the way, where maybe like Craig is emailing Jen, and then this scrupulous person has compromised somebody's password somewhere along the way and saw that email, and then poses as Jen and says, "Hey, Craig, so glad that you emailed me. Here's what you need to do to finalize things. Wire me $30,000 to my account." And then Craig says, "All right, sounds good. I've been talking with Jen. I'm going to wire her the money." And then Craig wires the money, calls Jen and says, "Hey, did you get it? What's up? What do I do now?" And she's like, "What are you talking about? That wasn't me." And like, you can't get that back. It's very difficult to process because you have to identify who the person is and where they are and try to press charges. And that's not easy. But
no, you're exactly right.
yeah, when it comes to wire fraud, what's been your experience? How can somebody as a consumer be alert, be aware, protect themselves? And have you seen anybody go through it before?
Yes, we just had a huge big class on it because another a local title company just ate $178,000 that they lost on they were wiring a payoff, and the bank that supplied the wiring instructions supplied the wrong instructions. So the title company, to pay off this home, relied upon the bank and just sent it off without verifying it. Our company does multiple steps. The first thing, when we get a contract, we have a call center that is purely devoted to call the buyer and call the seller and talk to them about fraud. The first call that goes out: "Thank you so much for choosing us. Welcome. I'm so excited for your purchase. Here's a scary thing."
Right.
And pretty much our job is to scare the living beep out of people to make sure that they are hyper vigilant, because like Adrian said, those emails that are going out, they make it look so legit. And it could be one letter off, it could be a dash. They do everything to make sure that you fully believe. So we, at the welcome call, it starts off by saying that our wiring instructions will never change. You will never get an email that says, "Hey, we've switched. This is now the new wiring instructions." We send them out at the very beginning when you first get your contract. People, we say, "Take a look at these. Just so you know, the bank will never change. The numbers will never change. If you have any questions, call Jen." And that's exactly what it says. And that's exactly what the script says. So everybody, I mean, in our company, you will get fired if you do not make this call, because it is that serious. So after the call is made and folks are made aware that wire fraud is out there, we say, listen, we're going to work in this secure portal called Qualia. And all the information that is passed back and forth has to be through Qualia because it has multiple layers of protection. We never send regular emails giving anybody's account information. I never let realtors have those wiring instructions because, they're working on their Gmail accounts. And so I never want the realtors to take that responsibility. I won't even share the wiring instructions with lenders because I don't want them to have the weight of if something did happen that they would be responsible. And then when we do at the very end, like with seller proceeds, we have a form that the seller fills out with their information. And before a wire can be sent, I have to call the bank, verify that that account is right, the name is right, the routing number is right, the amount is right. And then it goes to our wire department. They have to verify those numbers before it can be initiated.
Okay.
So I guess when
checks and balances in place, then it sounds like.
Yes, that's exactly right. And so I guess if you are shopping around for a title company, go ahead and just say, what secure portals do you use? How are your emails encrypted and protected? What is your wire policy?
Right.
How are you?
In my industry,
how are you protecting my money?
Right. So that's a really good question. And that applies to so many different industries. If you're interviewing a professional to help you with anything, security of information is huge. And I think that's a valid question for almost anyone. So when it comes down to your title agency that you're working with, I think that's a huge piece of advice. People ask me all the time, what kind of encryption do you use on your website? When I log in, do I have to be worried about, anybody getting my passwords? Do you have multi-factor authentication? All that type of it. I get those questions asked all the time, and it's normal. It's commonplace. So I would say definitely ask that question of anybody you're working with, because there are lots of laws in place to protect your information. I mean, it gets as strict for me as I have to, by law, have a clean desk. I literally cannot have the client information sitting out on my desk where
that's the same with us. That's it.
Yeah.
And we have to have locks on our doors. I mean, there are, we call it, are you AltaCert, or what's it called? The certification we have. I don't know. We had to do it and it took years, and I don't know if it took years really, but in my mind it did. But basically all the same things. Some title companies don't go through and get their certification. So that is another question to ask. And another thing, sellers, we ask for their social security numbers, and I get the kickback a lot because, people are very protective of that, and as they should. And they say, well, Jen, why do you need our social security number? And it goes back to, we're making sure evil Adrian Hall isn't the same as, good making decision Adrian Hall. We're also ordering payoffs. So we're calling your current mortgage holder. We're making sure that gets paid off, and they ask for your social security number. Also with sellers, we are filling out the 1099. So that's what the form we use to report the sale of the property to the IRS. So we need a social security number for that. So I think though, with people on the front end, if they know that we are requiring that information and that there's a reason for it, they're a lot more willing to give it up. And then the very last form that I have people sign at closing is a copy of our privacy policy. And it just says, we do not sell your information. We keep everything confidential. Everything you've given us today will not go anywhere. It will not be sold to anybody. But then with that, I caution folks. I say, listen, buying and selling property, it's public record. So in the next 3 months, you are going to get all sorts of junk mail, right? It's just like when you buy a car and everybody starts calling you about your car and the warranty you need to get. And if you don't do this in 90 days, it's the same with buying a home. So I sit at the closing table and I say, listen, you're going to get stuff in the mail that looks like it's from your lender. It's going to look like it's from your title company. It's going to look like it's from a government office saying, if you don't pay this money, your deed will not be recorded. It will not be released. There are all of these scams out there. It's not just wire. It's just people preying on just ignorance, right? And so part of my job is to scare people and then to educate them.
I like it. I'm going to teach you and I need you to listen. Here's why. Okay.
Yep. Sit up, pay attention.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that important though. Like they're getting good, and you have to always be your own financial advocate. I feel no matter what you're doing, you have to be the one that's protecting your money, your process, and your life. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, we're kind of coming up on the close. Is there anything that you feel is a common misconception in the overall process, or things that, somebody as a buyer or seller could or should be doing to make sure it's as smooth as possible for them?
I think the most common misconception that buyers and sellers have is that title and lenders are one and the same, that we like are sitting next to each other, working on things. They sometimes, when I tell people, I'm still waiting on some docs from your lender, they don't understand that I just can't print up a loan package. Like I don't make these documents. I don't fabricate them myself. That because we are the neutral third party, that we are collecting docs from the lender, from the realtor, from your insurance company, from your homeowners, all these different parties. That's our job. Can I produce them? No, I'm just trying to collect them all. So a lot of times people will get frustrated with me. Like we had an instance yesterday where the wife was not on the deed. And she just threw this absolute fit at me that I couldn't just go in and produce a deed of trust, that I couldn't just type it up myself. And I said, I apologize, but that comes from your lender. Well, I talked to them and they said that you could do it. And, I get it. And I want to help you. I really do. But just because you're going to bully me, I'm not going to change. I can't just produce a deed of trust. The other common misconception is a warranty deed is what we sign at the very end, and it transfers the property from the seller to the buyer. We prepare that warranty deed based on the deed of trust. So whatever your lender is going to say is on the deed of trust, whatever name you put on there, if you didn't want to be known as a junior, if that's how you didn't want to take title, I can't just go in and delete the junior off of it. That is coming from your deed of trust from your lender. So don't get mad at me. I don't make the rules. I just have to follow them.
I like it.
You're the referee, like you said. You make sure everybody plays nice.
I do look good in black and white.
Love it. Well, I thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. If people want to connect with you online, where can they find you at?
They can go to our website, TennesseeTitle.com. They can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, or they can email me at jyoung@tntitle.com, or stop by my office for coffee, water, tea, soda, mints, or free pens.
Thank you so much, Jen. We really appreciate you being on the podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for educating the world and making it a safer place for us to spend our money.
Well, we do our best. We try to hang in there. So.
All right, fellas, you guys have a good day.
All right, thank you. You too.
All right, bye.